There was a curious moment at a Manchester United news conference yesterday when the manager, Sir Alex Ferguson, took exception to a question from a reporter. Rob Harris from Associated Press asked how important Ryan Giggs was for the Champions League final on Saturday. The manager replied that all players were important. But later, microphones heard him whispering to a colleague about the reporter. Sir Alex said, "We'll get him. Ban him." Is that what can happen when a reporter asks a question someone in authority takes exception to? Rob Harris was, it seems, the only reporter at the news conference to ask about Ryan Giggs. How could the public be sure that journalists are being fearless on their behalf? We've approached experienced reporters and commentators from 4 different areas of journalism to ask them about that. In a moment, we'll hear from the former BBC political correspondent Nick Jones, the showbiz journalist Boyd Hilton from Heat magazine, and from the world of fashion, Trinny Woodall. First, the sports editor of the Manchester Evening News, Peter Spencer.
The way that press conferences are constructed, certainly at Manchester United and big clubs, Manchester City as well, there's so much media interest that it's kind of divvied up. And we go along with that in the media because it suits us as well. So when you get someone who comes along and upsets the apple cart, let's say press conference which is about the European Cup final, the Champions League final as it's now called, it causes disquiet. So that's one version of events, and you've got to look at it from a commercial point of view as well, because it's my duty as sports editor to produce approximately 50 pages, be it preview and after-match reaction to United's game. So it's not in my interest to upset the manager unduly at this early stage, and obviously he was upset by the Ryan Giggs question.
But I mean, on that specific thing, without dwelling on that too much, it wasn't exactly a hostile question, was it? It was basically asking how important is Ryan Giggs?
Yeah, it was quite a crafty question, really, because at first sight Ferguson didn't just answer it by saying all players are of significance for Manchester United, and then it sort of dawned on him that the reporter was probing into the areas of the privacy row.
Many listeners to sports broadcasting might assume that journalists are there in that sort of fearless, freedom of information way to get at the truth come what may. But given what you've said about your need to fill the paper and to have a decent relationship with the managers and the clubs, I don't suppose that's always possible.
If the manager doesn't want to answer a question, he just doesn't answer it, and because he feels certainly entitled to set the agenda at his own press conference. So that's how United see it. Of course, we in the media see it slightly differently, because we'd like to ask him what we like. But if he does give you the knockback on a question, you're not going to fill those cold inches, are you? So you might as well move on to something else. Otherwise, the reporter's going to have someone like me to answer to. So, we've got 3 pages. What are you going to put in there then?
Often one knew in a briefing that 1 or 2 selected journalists would be told the exclusives afterwards, after the pack had left. We can sense it when some journalists are perhaps in the know and they're not asking the killer questions.
Why would the killer question not be asked?
The killer question isn't asked because it's quite likely that those journalists in the know don't want to rock the boat.
Has anyone ever tried to ban you in the way that apparently the Manchester United manager was thinking of doing?
The usual trick with a political spin doctor is to ban a journalist if they sense that they belong, for example, to a rival party, or perhaps they're a committed activist and not a proper journalist. But of course the trick really is to use humour, to make fun and ridicule the journalist who's seen as a troublemaker. Now, this, I'm afraid, is one of those tricks which doesn't seem to be in Alex Ferguson's toolbox. He's not quite capable of delivering it, but I've got the scars on my back.
Are there more checks and balances as time goes on, Nick, with Twitter, with political bloggers, with that sense at least of more openness?
That, I think, is the great change that we've noticed with the evolution of the online media world, with online journalism, with Twitter and so on. There are fewer and fewer hiding places left. So the journalist who's trying to collude is more than likely to be exposed. And as I say, equally it applies to the spin doctor, to the boss like Alex Ferguson, who of course oversteps the mark. What he says is picked up and is played ad nauseum.
What often happens is that when you negotiate an interview with a celebrity, that there's all kinds of stipulations that the public relations people try to impose. Sometimes we're even asked to sign an actual agreement not to ask them about their private lives or particular issues before we get to interview them. And you have to weigh up whether, for a magazine like ours, whether it's worth doing that interview or whether it will seem ridiculous that you're not asking the questions that our readers will want to be asked.
And how often do you sign the agreement and then ask the question anyway?
Quite rarely. I mean, I think if you actually sign a piece of paper saying you're not going to do something, I think it's fairly bad form to then go ahead and do it. And you're even into a legal issue there where you're signing a document. I think we'd be very careful not to do that. But if you're kind of given a quiet word to, which often happens before an interview, almost 5 minutes before an interview with a celebrity, and the PR says, "Oh, by the way, I'd rather you didn't ask them this," then I often do in a kind of slightly sly way.
So is that overzealous PRs and relaxed celebrities?
Oh, you get a lot of overzealous PRs. They assume that their clients don't want to be asked questions about something or other. But in the end, they often don't even check with their client whether that's the case.
But how much are you and other celebrity journalists colluding if you have any kind of agreement with the PR or with anyone else? Aren't readers entitled to know that you'll ask whatever the hell you want?
You know what? Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, absolutely. But I think you have to be look at it as that we're not dealing with important world issues here. We're not we're not Newsweek or I don't know, The Guardian talking to politicians. I think we're a fairly irreverent, cheeky celebrity weekly magazine, and that's the genre. And I think we absolutely try on principle to ask the questions that our readers want to know of people. And if we don't think we're going to be able to ask pertinent questions that our readers want to know, then we just won't do the interview.
I find you've always just got to be honest. That is the integrity of a journalist, to be honest and give their audience the truth. There are going to be instances where people are very close to designers and they have personal friendships with them, and maybe if they have a show and it's not so brilliant, they might say it's okay instead of terrible. Or if they bring something out, they'll say it. But in fashion, you have a very different area because you have advertising revenues which drive fashion magazines. They will be told by the advertising department, X company has paid this much this month. You need to use one of their outfits in one of your editorial spreads. They might not like the clothes, but they'll do it.
Have you ever been punished for your honesty?
Yes, we've been, banned from a fashion show. We've had, people who, lots of fashion journalists would be sent things all year, and especially at Christmas. There used to be lots of things going around. Susanna and I would never receive anything.
Trinny Woodall, preceded by Boyd Hilton, Nick Jones and Peter Spencer.